He was supposed to be dead. Just 47 minutes in. A shattered leg. Blood soaking the dust. His radio crushed. Abandoned in the heart of a thunderstorm on the high plains. No people. No voices. No one even knew he still existed. And then, something happened that no one could have imagined. Not a rescue team. A herd of wild Mustangs. They didn't trample him. They didn't rear or flee. They didn't act like the untamed creatures they'd been for 1,000 years. They stopped. They looked. And they chose to stay. A circle was formed. Not by humans, but by the very souls of the wild. Of survival. Of redemption. A mare brought water, cradled in her mouth. A foal found the rescue whistle and laid it gently on his chest. And the lead stallion stood as a shield through the night, as if pleading for the life of a man the world had already begun to forget. If you think this is just a strange story about animal instinct, wait for the final moment. Because maybe this is a confession you'll find yourself whispering through tears of your own. The wind in Red Hollow never learned kindness. It cut through bone, flung red dust into the air like the ashes of an ancient world. This place, though barren, sun-seared, was no haven for dreamers. It was a realm of absolute silence. No power. No signal. No people. Only rocks, wind, and nameless spirits wandering the folds of time. Elias Hart knew this well. He didn't come to Red Hollow to live, but to vanish. At 38, once a decorated firefighter in Salt Lake County, he now existed like a ghost. Alone in a weather-worn cabin nearly 50 miles from the nearest human voice. 12 years in the fire service. He'd pulled children from burning homes, climbed through walls of flame, collapsed under smoke-choked skies. But nothing, not even the worst blaze, compared to the night his own home went up in fire. His wife, Elena. His 4-year-old daughter, Lila. Both gone in an instant, trapped when a kitchen fire met an overloaded power line. Elias arrived just in time to watch the roof collapse. To hear the sirens of his own unit screaming too late. 3 years later, Elias was still running. Not from fire, but from memory. Now, he worked part-time for a biological conservation group, monitoring wildlife and water sources across Red Hollow. It was a job few wanted, isolated, thankless, dangerous. Elias took it for one reason: out here, there was no one to face. That morning, the sky was a brutal blue. The kind of high desert light that pierced straight to the skin. Elias guided his ATV toward the western slope, aiming for a seasonal watering hole. Jacket zipped, wide-brimmed hat pulled low, radio clipped at his hip. Routine. Until he saw movement, far off, flickering between dust and glare. Large animals, gathered by the ravine. He raised his binoculars and held his breath. Wild Mustangs. 8, maybe 10. None tagged. No one had logged a herd here before. And at the front, a black stallion, scar running white across its neck. "Who the hell are you?" Elias muttered, lifting his camera. His breathing quickened, not from fear, but from something older. The feeling of being watched back. He stepped off the ATV and approached the cliff's edge, where the valley opened wide. The ground here was treacherous, loose shale over red sand, jagged with shards of old rock. He paused, hesitated, then stepped forward. The earth betrayed him. A dry, cracking sound, small, sharp. The gravel beneath his heel gave way like shattered glass. His body lunged forward, arms flailing for anything. No roots. No branches. Nothing but air and gravity. In that split second, Elias saw the sky flip above him. The first sensation wasn't fear, it was uprooting. A complete severing from the world. No scream. No sound. Just wind. Rock. Flesh on stone. A blow to the ribs, he couldn't breathe. A tear down his shoulder. Then impact. A flash of white. Then black. No one screamed. No one caught him. Just Elias falling. His body slammed against the hillside, dragged like a sack of bone through dust and grit. A sharp snap, his left leg broken. He tried to shield his head, but the final impact was merciless. Time vanished. When consciousness returned, it came like a thief, stealing his strength. The pain wasn't sharp, it was suffocating. Like his own body wanted him gone. The sky had changed. Gray-white light now bled across the landscape. A bolt of lightning danced along the far ridge, followed by thunder rolling deep like the hunger of the earth. His throat was dust. His tongue stuck to his teeth. Every breath scraped like glass. He turned, groaning, the left leg twisted wrong, bent at a hideous angle. Blood soaked through his pant leg, thick and dark. His radio was gone. Crushed somewhere behind him. No water. No food. No one knew where he was. And the storm was coming. He lay back, letting the wind cut across his skin, the dust flaying him in tiny invisible lines. Each second slowed, heavy. His heartbeat grew dull, not peaceful, but resigned. His body had started to give up. He let out a laugh, raw, hoarse. "Well, Lila, looks like your dad's finally coming home." Lightning screamed across the sky. Thunder followed like a beast unchained. The wind no longer howled, it clawed. His eyes blurred. His mind drifted. No thoughts. No fear. Just one truth, this is where I die. And no one will find me. The wind howled like something ancient. Every small tremor in his limbs was no longer movement, but resistance. The blood pooling in his back grew cold. And his hands that once pulled people from fire, lay trembling on cold stone, unable to even save their owner. He tried to whisper her name. Lila. But the syllable froze on his tongue. Stuck in his throat. Dissolved into the wind. A single tear slipped down his dirt-streaked cheek. Not from pain, but from a primal terror, the kind that comes when a man realizes he'll leave the world unseen. Unheard. Unremembered. In the distance, thunder growled again. Lightning split the clouds, and darkness swallowed what was left. Elias felt his body sinking. Not into sleep, but into erasure. The fog of unconsciousness wasn't pitch black like Elias expected. It was gray, suffocating, and cold like ash. Every time he seemed ready to slip away for good, a gust of wind, a distant rumble of thunder, or just the faint pulse of his heart would pull him back, like a drowning man gasping from the bottom of the earth. Somewhere in the damp mist, a faint light stirred. He couldn't tell if it was lightning or if the sun had finally pushed through the clouds. Elias didn't know if he was still clinging to life or had drifted beyond. Everything was blurred, weightless, except for one thing, a gaze. He couldn't see it clearly, but he could feel it. Something was watching him. Not a person, not a predator, but something else entirely, like a soul observing him from a place where no words existed. The wind softened. The earth beneath him felt as though it were breathing. Elias cracked his eyes open. Mist hung heavy. Light rain floated through the air. And within the hazy veil, a dark figure emerged. Long legs. Arched neck. A mane fluttering in the breeze. A large creature stood just a few meters away, completely still, like a statue carved from smoke. A horse. Elias's heart clenched. Not just one, there were many. As his vision adjusted to the diffused light, he saw them. Around him, silhouettes faded in and out of the mist like living monoliths. Wild Mustangs. 8, 9, 10? He couldn't count. His mind still buzzed. They didn't move. Didn't stomp. Didn't bolt. They stood still, as if waiting. As if guarding something sacred. Elias strained to lift his head. His neck resisted like rusted metal. He forced his eyes upward and froze. The closest horse, directly in front of him, was a stallion. Massive. Coat black as burnt cinders. And across its neck, plainly visible, a long white scar, thin and deep, ran from its throat to its shoulder. An old wound, healed, but never erased. Elias felt his blood ice over. The stallion looked directly at him. No blinking. No flinch. Not the look of a beast, but of a being, with intention. As if it was reading him. "Who are you?" Elias rasped. His voice crumbled like dust. Too weak to form proper words. But he was sure it understood. Not through ears, but something deeper. The stallion didn't answer. But it didn't leave either. Another figure broke from the formation. A mare. Chestnut with a copper sheen. Lean body, strong shoulders. Her mane was soaked, her eyes intelligent, eyes that seemed to think. She stepped toward Elias's left side. Slow. Careful. Each movement measured, as if she feared disturbing something sacred. She lowered her head toward a shallow indentation in the earth, where rain had pooled into a small puddle. Elias thought she would drink. But she didn't. She scooped up a mouthful of water, lifted her head, and walked toward him. His breath caught in his throat. She bent down. Her muzzle drew close to his face. Then, deliberately, let droplets of rainwater fall from her lips onto his parched mouth. Cold. Fresh. Metallic. For the first time in hours, Elias swallowed. A sip. Tiny. But it felt like a miracle. A piece of his soul reignited. And in that fragile moment, an image surfaced in his mind, Lila. His little girl, with wide brown eyes that always sparkled when she saw pictures of horses. Her whispered bedtime dreams of a Mustang sanctuary where wild horses roamed free across golden fields. He had never believed. But she always had. And now, this mare was giving him water the exact way her fairy tales used to end. He wanted to cry. But there were no tears. The mare turned. Repeated the gesture. A second time. Then a third. Each time, she brought back another sip of life. Elias wanted to speak. To thank her. To say someone's name. But everything was trapped behind his ribs. All he had was breath, and a barely perceptible nod, poured from every shred of strength left in him, offered to the silent creature beside him. The mare stepped away, and with her, the last drops of water from her muzzle glistened faintly in the dying light. Elias lay still, the cold seeping deeper into his bones, but the edge of delirium had dulled. Awareness, no matter how feeble, had returned. And with it came the voice of pain. His body was a battleground. Each breath grated like sandpaper against cracked ribs. His leg, twisted and bloated, burned with a sharp, bone-deep agony. But his mind, now partially lucid, clung to a singular, primal instinct: survive. The rain picked up, slicing through the wind in diagonal lashes. Above, thunder growled again, distant yet warning. He needed to act. Now. Or there wouldn't be a dawn. Elias's right hand, the only limb that retained any useful strength, fumbled along the mud. He remembered something. A whistle. A piece of emergency gear clipped to his belt. If it had survived the fall. He twisted his torso slightly. Pain flared like firecrackers across his chest and spine. He gritted his teeth, swallowing a scream. Inch by inch, his fingers crept toward his waist. Gone. The whistle wasn't there. Panic surged. He searched the ground near his side, pawing blindly, hard hammering. In the corner of his blurred vision, a flash of silver. There it was. Half buried in red mud. Just beyond reach. He tried to move. His muscles obeyed like rusted gears, shrieking with every motion. His arm stretched. His fingertips brushed the surface of the whistle, then slipped. So close. A groan escaped his throat, more from helplessness than pain. The storm was coming. He could feel it in the way the air pulled inward, as if the land itself were bracing. And then, something moved. A small figure stepped into view. A colt. Young, no more than a few months old. Legs awkward and long, mane still thin and messy. He had the hesitant steps of a child, but eyes wide with wonder. The colt approached the whistle, sniffing. Elias watched, frozen. Daring to hope, but barely. The colt nuzzled the metal piece. Then bit gently, lifting it from the mud. For one awful second, Elias thought the young horse would carry it away. But instead, the colt stepped forward. Closer. He paused, then stretched his neck and dropped the whistle onto Elias's chest. Elias gasped. The whistle bounced once, then settled right above his heart. Shaking, he wrapped his hand around it. Pressed it to his cracked lips. And blew. 3 short bursts. 3 long. 3 short again. The universal call. The sound sliced through the rain. High. Sharp. Defiant. The horses flinched. Several shifted nervously, hooves stamping the wet earth. But they didn't flee. Elias blew again. Louder this time. Rainwater streamed into his eyes, blurring everything, but he didn't stop. He repeated the signal over and over until he no longer had breath to give. Then silence. Except for the wind. And hooves. They moved. Not away, but toward him. The stallion. The scarred one. Caligo. He stepped forward, breaking from the mist like something carved from legend. His coat gleamed, slick with water, black as oil. His eyes, still unreadable, glanced toward the clouds, then toward Elias. Caligo lowered his head. One breath. Then another. He turned. And lay down. Beside Elias. The ground trembled. Another horse followed. Then another. One by one, the Mustangs lowered their bodies, forming a circle around him. A shield. A wall of warmth and muscle. The rain intensified. Wind howled, tugging at coats and mane. Lightning cracked, turning the sky white. But inside the ring of horses, there was stillness. Elias couldn't comprehend it. Wild horses did not act like this. They fled from storms. From humans. From danger. But these creatures stayed. They covered him. Protected him. Some stood, some lay. One pressed its flank against his side. He could feel their heartbeats. Hear their breaths. The sound of living things choosing to remain. He wanted to speak. But only a whisper came. Why? No answer. Only the wind. And then, a memory. Lila. Laughing as she galloped around the yard on her wooden stick horse, a paper mane taped to the top. her favorite book in her lap, Mustangs of the Wind. Her soft voice begging him to build her a stable in the backyard. Her face the day he told her no, that wild things didn't belong near people. Now here he was, kept alive by those very wild things. The irony was unbearable. So was the beauty. Tears came, not from pain, but from the ache of recognition. From the unbearable gentleness of these animals. From the ghost of a daughter whose dreams had come true for him, not her. Rain washed his face. And in it, tears. The night deepened. The storm raged. But Elias, surrounded by hooves and muscle and breath, felt no fear. Just awe. Somewhere in that sacred stillness, consciousness left him again. But this time, not in despair. This time, wrapped in wonder. Pain brought him back. Not the sharp, searing kind, but the deep, cold ache that clung to the marrow and whispered of endings. Elias stirred. The air smelled of ozone, and the sky above the circle of horses churned with something dark and growing. Another storm was coming. Not one of wind and rain alone, but a storm to decide who would walk away and who would vanish. His lips moved, but no sound came. The last of his strength had been used calling out to a sky that didn't answer. Even now, lying half-shielded beneath the flank of a Mustang, he knew time was draining. The warmth from the herd was fading as his own body failed to retain it. Then his hand brushed something crinkled. The foil blanket. He didn't even remember unclipping it, but there it was, half pulled from its pouch, edges stuck in mud. If he could spread it out, if the search team returned, it might reflect enough light. Might be seen. If. His fingers shook uncontrollably. He tried to lift the blanket, to flick it open. The mylar clung together, sticky from the wet. A useless silver mass in hands that no longer obeyed. The wind shrieked overhead. He cursed, the sound no more than a breathless exhale. Then he dropped the foil and slumped back, dizzy. A streak of lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the blood-matted dirt around him. The storm was here. And Elias knew, if they didn't find him in the next hour, no one ever would. Then, a tug. Soft. At first, he thought it was the wind. But it was purposeful. Steady. Rhythmic. The colt. He'd returned. His curious eyes wide, nostrils flaring at the metallic scent of foil. His teeth latched gently onto a corner of the blanket. And he pulled. The foil unfurled with a whisper. Rain fell harder, bouncing off the reflective surface. The colt tugged again, stepping back. And again. Until over half the blanket had spread open, shimmering like a mirror across the slope. Elias blinked tears, or maybe rain, from his lashes. He couldn't move. But he didn't need to. The colt had done what he could not. Then something changed in the herd. Heads turned. Ears twitched. A shift passed through them like a wind through grass. Elias watched in a daze as the stallion, Caligo, lifted his head high, scanning the ridgeline. The sky split open with thunder. And Caligo moved. No hesitation. No fear. The stallion turned from the circle and galloped up the slope, his hoofs pounding mud and stone, mane flaring in the storm. He climbed. Higher. And when he reached the ridge's crest, where the horizon curved like the edge of the world, Caligo stopped. He reared. And screamed. The sound tore through the wind. It wasn't a neigh. It wasn't a call for herd or mate. It was a declaration. Then he slammed his hooves against the rock. Once. Twice. 3 times. The sound rang out like gunshots. Elias heard it echo down the canyon. And somewhere, someone else did too. 26 miles east, a search and rescue helicopter dipped below a line of clouds. In the cockpit, the pilot fought crosswinds as the spotter scanned the landscape with infrared and naked eye. Hours had passed. Hope was fading. Then, there. The co-pilot pointed. What was that? A glint. Just a flash. Like sun off a mirror. Then again. And again. Change course, the pilot barked. As the chopper turned, the spotter adjusted the searchlight, sweeping across the ridge. Her breath caught. It's not just the light, look at the ridge. Through binoculars, she saw them, horses. Not running. Not grazing. Staring. All of them. At the same spot. A stallion stood atop the ridge. Still. Powerful. Soaked. His mane whipped by the wind. And below him, on the hillside, a flash of foil blinked in and out of view. Drop altitude, the pilot said. That's our man. The rescue crew didn't question it. Elias didn't hear the rotor blades at first. But the horses did. They stirred. Hooves stomped. Nostrils flared. Some turned in alarm, but Caligo held fast. He didn't move until the first beam of light sliced through the dark and fixed on Elias. Then he turned. And with the grace of something eternal, he stepped back. Down the ridge. Back to the herd. The chopper landed half a field away. Paramedics sprinted through the storm. Ranger Hart? Can you hear me? He tried to speak. A whisper escaped. You found me. They wrapped him in dry blankets. Applied IVs. Stabilized his leg. All the while, Elias tilted his head. The horses were retreating. But slowly. Caligo paused once at the ridge. Looked back. And then disappeared into the storm. The world Elias awoke to was not a quiet one. Machines beeped. Plastic curtains rustled. The air smelled sterile, sanitized to the point of being offensive. Overhead, the ceiling glowed with white fluorescent panels that felt more alien than any canyon storm. He blinked once. Then again. A soft voice called out, "He's awake." Boots shuffled. Another voice, firm and professional, "Elias Hart, can you hear me? You're at St. George Regional. You've been here for 3 days. You're safe." Safe. The word didn't land. Not at first. He tried to speak, but his throat was raw. He reached instinctively to his chest, as if the whistle might still be there. Gone. Instead, he found a line of tape over his ribs and a deep ache radiating through his side. Your leg's been reset, the voice continued. You had hypothermia, a severe concussion, and some internal bleeding. But you're lucky. Real lucky. Lucky. He closed his eyes. And all at once, the herd. The colt. Caligo. The foil blanket. He opened his mouth, wincing, and croaked, "The horses." A pause. Then a soft chuckle. "Yeah, you've mentioned that before. Several times. That they rescued you?" He nodded, slowly. A new voice, woman, calm, clipped. "We saw some on the ridge." And the body cam caught glimpses. But a protective circle? A stallion signaling for help? It's a stretch, Ranger. He stared at the ceiling. And said nothing. 3 days passed. Physical therapists prodded his legs, nurses whispered about him just out of earshot, and every time someone brought up the rescue, he repeated the same thing. They didn't leave me. They saved me. The reactions varied, from polite smiles to sidelong glances. The only one who didn't dismiss it outright was a man who visited on the fourth day. He didn't introduce himself right away. Just stepped in during a quiet hour, holding a slim tablet and a folder marked USFS. He was older, lean, with eyes that had seen too much. He took a chair, opened the file, and said, "Your stallion. Black coat. White scar. You called him Caligo." Elias froze. The man slid over a photo of blurry, but real. A still frame from the rescue cam. Caligo on the ridge. Eyes glowing in the stormlight. "That horse was freeze-branded 12 years ago," the man continued. "We didn't notice until we enhanced the footage. Brand marks faded under the hair, but still traceable." He tapped the screen. He was part of a bureau project, Rehabilitation Horses. Trained to work with children recovering from trauma. PTSD, mainly. Elias sat up straighter. "Children?" The man nodded. "Yes. They called him Marcus back then. Smart. Empathetic. Responded to emotional shifts in the kids. But after the program closed, the horses were deemed non-essential. He was one of the few released back into the wild. No tracking chip, no follow-up." Elias whispered, he remembered. The man's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, he didn't just sense distress. He chose to stay. To lead the herd, to protect me. To signal for help. That is an instinct. That's memory. That's a choice." A long silence. Then the man said quietly, "There's a theory. Not mainstream, but growing. That trauma leaves impressions not just in humans, but in animals. That behavior isn't erased, it's buried. Waiting." He looked Elias in the eyes. "Maybe what we call wild is just memory, waiting for a reason to resurface." Neither of them spoke after that for a while. Then the man stood, closed the folder, and left without a word. Later that night, Elias stared out the window at the desert skyline. The lights of town blurred at the edges. He couldn't sleep. Didn't want to. His mind returned again and again to Caligo's eyes. To the colt's breath against his skin. To the sensation of hooves encircling his broken body like living monuments. He whispered to the night, "You remembered, didn't you?" Outside, the wind stirred. But only the night listened. A year passed. The world moved on, as it always does. Headlines faded. The scars healed. His limp grew less visible. But Elias' heart didn't forget. Some memories don't stay in the past. Some call you back. And so, on a dawn that shimmered with frost, Elias stood once more at the edge of Red Hollow. The wind hadn't changed. Still sharp, still whispering through the stones like it knew secrets he'd forgotten. The ground crunched beneath his boots as he walked. Slower now. Wiser, maybe. But still searching. He didn't come to prove anything. There were no cameras. No scientists. No headlines. Just him. And the hope that something remembered. The cliff where he had fallen hadn't changed. Nature didn't mourn. It merely recorded. Rock still jutted sharp from the ridge. The slope still dropped away like a knife edge into the valley below. Elias stood at a safe distance this time, eyes scanning the openness. Nothing. No movement. Just the hush of the land holding its breath. He waited. Then he saw it. A figure. Dark. Tall. Still. Standing exactly where it had once stood, on the ridge opposite. Not approaching. Not pacing. Just there. Watching. Elias didn't call. He didn't wave. He just looked back. And Caligo remained. It began like a slow wave. From behind the stallion, others emerged. First the chestnut mare. Then a larger figure, leaner, stronger now. The colt. Not a colt anymore. A young Mustang with the same curious eyes, now tempered by time. He didn't rush forward. But he didn't look away. Elias stood as if anchored to the spot. The cold wind bit at his neck, but he barely noticed. There was warmth growing in his chest, one that burned through the frost. He remembered Lila's drawing. The one she taped to the fridge. A herd of horses under a golden sun. One of them black as midnight, with a scar like a comet. He never understood why she gave that one wings. Maybe she knew something he didn't. Maybe she'd always known. The wind shifted. Caligo moved. Not much. Just a step. But in that step was a decision. He walked. Slowly, deliberately, down the ridge. His hooves pressed into the earth with the gravity of something ceremonial, an ancient rhythm returning to life. Elias felt his breath catch. His legs trembled. Not with fear, but with reverence. The mare followed. Then the grown colt. Then, like an old tide returning to familiar shores, the rest of the herd. Their hooves barely made a sound against the dry earth. They didn't run. They didn't flee. They came. And formed a loose semicircle again. But this time, not around a broken man. This time, around a memory. A memory made flesh. A promise once whispered into a storm. Caligo stopped 5 feet from Elias. His coat was still dark, still marked. His eyes, unblinking, held that same weight Elias remembered. That same recognition. Not just of man, but of meaning. The stallion didn't lower his head. He didn't nuzzle. Didn't perform some miracle for the cameras. He simply stood. And waited. Elias raised his hand. Just slightly. Palm open. No command. No gesture. No expectation. Only presence. The wind stilled. Birds quieted. And for a long, impossible moment, every living thing seemed to know the same truth. Not all souls come to leave. Some stay. And remember. Caligo stepped forward. Not to touch. Just to acknowledge. The distance between them was nothing now. Not in space. Not in time. Not in spirit. And Elias understood. This wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of a promise. One that never needed words. He stood there long after the herd had turned, long after their hooves had faded into the horizon. The cold didn't bite anymore. The silence wasn't heavy. He whispered to the earth, to the ridge, to the wind, "You came back." And somewhere, though no ear could hear it, a voice answered. Not in language, but in presence. Not all wild horses are truly wild. And not all humans are truly the ones who rescue. Sometimes, in the eye of the storm, when the world turns its back, when every sound vanishes into silence, it isn't hands that save us. It isn't words. It's presence. Still. Steady. Sacred. Elias didn't find this truth in books, nor in sirens or flames. He found it in a stallion whose throat bore the memory of a wound. In a mare who did not run, but returned with water cupped in her breath. In a colt who laid a signal of survival upon his chest like a blessing. These weren't beasts. They were memory, made muscle and hoof. They were the whisper of something ancient, older than language, deeper than science. They did not stay because they were trained to. They stayed because something in a broken man's silence called to the quiet part of them that still remembered. Remembered what? That the wild is not wild because it lacks feeling. It is wild because it remembers without needing to speak. That instinct is not cold. It is memory in motion. That mercy can wear mane and hooves. So the next time lightning dances across a lonely sky, or the wind howls without warning, ask yourself, what if the one who finds you is not there to be saved, but to remind you who you were before the noise, before the forgetting? Because sometimes, in the darkest night, a creature with no name, no voice, no debt to pay, might just be the only soul still willing to stand by yours. And in that silence, a part of you will rise. Not as a survivor, but as someone remembered. If this story moved you, leave a comment below sharing what it stirred in your heart. Have you ever felt a connection that defied explanation? Like this video if you believe in the bond between humans and the untamed. Subscribe to Gallop of Glory so you never miss the next story of healing, wonder, and the unexpected wisdom of nature. Share this story with someone who may need to be reminded, sometimes the wild saves us in ways no human ever could.